Have you ever found yourself awake in the middle of the night with that gnawing emptiness inside your chest? That moment when the world goes quiet and suddenly your thoughts seem deafeningly loud. You check your phone one more time, but all those notifications that seem so urgent during the day now feel hollow and meaningless. Maybe you've tried to pray, but the words feel mechanical, like you're just going through the motions. Your faith, which once burned bright, now feels like a distant memory, a habit rather than a heartbeat. I want to talk to you about something that transformed my own spiritual life during those dark hours of the night, when I felt God was furthest from me. It was in those moments of isolation that I discovered the profound wisdom of Saint Ignatius of Loyola, and how his approach to prayer, specifically the night rosary and his spiritual exercises, became the unexpected path back to an authentic relationship with God. What I discovered in those sleepless hours wasn't just another devotional practice, but a completely new way of encountering God in the darkness, both literal and spiritual. The night has always held a special place in our spiritual tradition. Think about it. The most significant moments in our faith often happened when the world was shrouded in darkness. Jesus was born during the night when shepherds watched their flocks. He prayed in Gethsemane while his disciples slept. The resurrection was discovered at dawn after the dark night had passed. There's something about nighttime that strips away our distractions and defenses, leaving us vulnerable, yet paradoxically more open to encounter the divine. When Saint Ignatius developed his spiritual exercises, he understood this profound truth about human psychology and spiritual awareness. He knew that in the quiet moments when our usual distractions fade, we can hear God's voice with remarkable clarity. But Ignatius offers us something more than just nice thoughts about nighttime prayer. He provides us with a structured yet deeply personal approach to encountering God in these moments. The night rosary, combined with Ignatian contemplation, creates a powerful spiritual technology that transforms a traditional prayer into an immersive encounter with God precisely when we might feel most alone. Let me share with you how this practice revolutionized my own faith journey as a young man struggling with doubts, questions, and the feeling that somehow God had become distant in my life, despite my best efforts to remain faithful. I remember a particular night when everything changed for me. I was in my mid-20s, dealing with career pressure, relationship uncertainties, and that creeping sense that maybe the faith of my childhood wasn't substantial enough for the complexities of adult life. I'd been going to Mass regularly, saying my prayers, but it all felt performative. That night, unable to sleep, I remembered something a Jesuit priest had mentioned during a retreat about Ignatius and his approach to nighttime prayer. On a whim, I grabbed my rosary beads, which had been collecting dust on my nightstand, and I decided to try something different. Instead of rushing through the prayers as I normally would, I began to apply the Ignatian technique of composition of place. As I held the first bead, I closed my eyes and imagined myself actually present at the Annunciation. Not just reciting words about it, but standing there in that small room in Nazareth, watching as Mary received the news that would change human history forever. I tried to see the dust particles floating in the sunbeams, hear the startled intake of Mary's breath as the angel appeared, feel the cool stone floor beneath my feet. And something extraordinary happened. The gospel story I had heard hundreds of times suddenly became real to me in a way it never had before. I wasn't just reciting prayers about events that happened 2,000 years ago. I was encountering them as living realities that somehow were still unfolding in the present moment in my own life. What makes the Ignatian approach to prayer, particularly the night rosary, so transformative is that it engages our entire being, not just our intellect. Ignatius understood something profound about human psychology and spirituality long before modern science confirmed it. Our imaginations are powerful gateways to deeper spiritual realities. When we pray the rosary using Ignatian contemplation, we're not just remembering historical events, we're actually participating in them through what Ignatius called the application of the senses. This isn't mere fantasy or creative visualization, it's a form of prayer that allows Scripture to come alive within us. The difference is subtle, but profound. In conventional prayer, we might think about the mysteries of the rosary in an abstract, intellectual way. In Ignatian prayer, we place ourselves within those mysteries, experiencing them from the inside. It's the difference between reading about love and actually falling in love. One is information, the other is transformation. This approach is especially powerful during the night hours, when our defenses are lowered and our capacity for imaginative engagement is heightened. The quiet, the darkness, the liminal space between wakefulness and sleep all create the perfect conditions for this kind of contemplative prayer. Before continuing, I want to connect with you more personally. Have you ever found yourself going through the motions in your prayer life? Those times when you say all the right words, but your heart feels 1,000 miles away from what your lips are speaking? If you're nodding right now, please share it in the comments with the words "I seek deeper prayer." This simple acknowledgement might be the first step toward a more authentic relationship with God. And beautifully, your comment could help someone else feel less alone in their spiritual journey. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give each other is simply knowing that someone else understands exactly what we're feeling in our walk with God. Now let's explore the theological foundations of what makes Ignatian spirituality, particularly the night rosary practice, so powerful. At its core, Ignatian spirituality is incarnational. What do I mean by that? It takes seriously the radical truth that God became flesh in Jesus Christ, entering fully into human experience. This isn't just a theological concept to Ignatius, it's the pattern for how God continues to work in our lives. God meets us in the concrete reality of our daily existence, not just in abstract ideas or concepts. When we pray the Rosary through an Ignatian lens, we're participating in this incarnational reality. We're not just thinking about the mysteries of Christ's life, we're allowing them to become incarnate within our own experience. This is why Ignatius places such emphasis on the imagination in prayer. Far from being a distraction or a lesser faculty, the sanctified imagination becomes a vehicle through which God can speak to us directly. The mysteries of the Rosary, joyful, luminous, sorrowful and glorious, become doorways through which we enter into the life of Christ, and Christ enters more fully into our lives. During the night hours, when our usual defenses and distractions are diminished, this kind of prayer can be especially potent. There's a fascinating paradox at work in night prayer, particularly when approached through Ignatian spirituality. On one hand, it's intensely personal, even solitary. You're alone in the darkness with God. Yet on the other hand, it connects you to the communion of saints, to centuries of believers who have prayed through the watches of the night. Ignatius himself experienced some of his most profound spiritual insights during nighttime prayer, including his famous vision at the Cardona River, which changed the course of his life. The night becomes a threshold space where heaven and earth, the visible and invisible worlds, seem to draw closer together. This is why many monastic traditions have always emphasized the importance of the night office prayers offered in the middle of the night when most of the world sleeps. There's something about praying when others are sleeping that creates a special kind of spiritual solidarity. You become, in a sense, a watchman for the world, standing guard in prayer while others rest. This dimension of night prayer gives it a quality of intercession that daylight prayers sometimes lack. But let me share something personal about my own journey with the night rosary and Ignatian prayer. It didn't always come easily to me. When I first began attempting Ignatian contemplation, I felt awkward, self-conscious, even a little silly. My mind wandered constantly. I couldn't visualize the gospel scenes clearly. I kept falling asleep mid-prayer. I worried I was doing it wrong. This is where another key insight from Ignatius became invaluable to me: his teaching on spiritual consolation and desolation. Ignatius recognized that our spiritual lives aren't static, they ebb and flow. Sometimes we feel God's presence vividly, what he called consolation. Other times we feel empty, dry, distant, what he called desolation. The genius of Ignatius is that he doesn't privilege one over the other. Both states can be valuable for spiritual growth. This was revolutionary for me. It meant that even my driest, most distracted prayers, even those nights when I fell asleep with the rosary still in my hand, weren't failures. They were part of the journey. They were teaching me perseverance, humility, dependence on God's grace, rather than my own spiritual performance. And paradoxically, it was often after periods of this seeming spiritual dryness that I experienced the most profound breakthroughs in prayer. One night I remember praying through the sorrowful mysteries, focusing on the agony in the garden. As I placed myself in that scene, imagining myself sitting a short distance from Jesus, as he prayed in anguish, I suddenly had a realization that shook me. Jesus had also experienced spiritual desolation. Not the garden feels so distant. His prayer, "Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me," wasn't so different from my own struggles in prayer. This wasn't just an intellectual realization, it was a felt experience of solidarity with Christ in his humanity. It fundamentally changed how I understood both my own spiritual dry spells and the meaning of Christ's passion. This is the power of Ignatian contemplation. It doesn't just give us new information about Jesus, it helps us enter into genuine communion with him, particularly in our struggles and weakness. The night rosary becomes not just a devotion, but a shared vigil with Christ himself. Let's look more practically at how Ignatius structured his approach to prayer and how we can apply it to the night rosary. The foundation of Ignatian prayer is the spiritual exercises, a carefully organized sequence of meditations and contemplations designed to help us discern God's will and grow in intimate friendship with Christ. While the full exercises are typically done over 30 days under the guidance of a spiritual director, the core methods can be applied to any form of prayer, including the rosary. Ignatius outlines a process that begins with what he calls the preparatory prayer, a simple act of placing oneself in God's presence and asking for the grace to pray well. This is followed by the composition of place, using the imagination to construct the setting of the gospel scene you'll be contemplating. Then comes the heart of the prayer, applying the senses to enter fully into the scene, seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, and smelling the world of the gospel. Finally, the prayer concludes with a colloquy, an intimate conversation with Christ Mary, or God the Father, as if speaking to a close friend. When applied to the night rosary, this structure creates a deeply immersive experience. Take, for example, the mystery of the Nativity. In conventional prayer, you might think briefly about Jesus being born in Bethlehem as you recite the Our Fathers and Hail Marys. In Ignatian contemplation of the same mystery, you would begin by imagining yourself physically present in the stable. You would notice the smell of animals and straw, the chill night air, the dimness broken only by a small fire or oil lamp. You would hear Mary's labored breathing, Joseph's words of encouragement, perhaps the lowing of cattle. You would see the exhaustion on the faces of Mary and Joseph, their wonder as they gaze at the newborn child. You would imagine touching the rough wood of the manger, feeling the contrast with the soft, swaddling clothes. As you move through the decade of the Rosary, each prayer becomes infused with this sensory experience, deepening your connection to the mystery itself. The result is that the Rosary becomes not just a recitation, but a genuine encounter. What makes this approach particularly powerful during night prayer is the natural alignment between outer and inner conditions. The physical darkness around you mirrors the setting of many gospel scenes. The quiet of the night hours allows for deeper concentration. The liminal state between wakefulness and sleep can actually facilitate the kind of imaginative engagement Ignatius encourages, making it easier to enter into the gospel scenes with your whole being. There's also something symbolically powerful about praying this way during the night. Throughout Scripture, night is often a time of divine revelation and encounter, from Jacob, wrestling with the angel, to the Exodus, happening at night, to the resurrection discovered at daybreak. By engaging in this kind of deep contemplative prayer during the night hours, we're participating in this biblical pattern of night as a privileged time of divine encounter. One of the most transformative elements of Ignatius's approach is what he calls the colloquy, the intimate conversation with Christ Mary, or God the Father, that concludes each meditation. This isn't formal prayer, but rather the kind of heart-to-heart exchange you might have with your closest friend. In the context of the night rosary, the colloquy allows you to bring your actual life with all its complexities into direct relationship with the gospel mysteries you've been contemplating. Maybe you're praying the third luminous mystery, the proclamation of the kingdom. After immersing yourself in scenes of Jesus preaching, healing, teaching, you might speak directly to him about the areas in your own life that need healing, the relationships that need restoration, the ways you struggle to live according to the values of God's kingdom. This kind of vulnerable, honest prayer creates a bridge between the gospel story and your personal story, allowing them to illuminate and transform each other. The night, with its unique quality of vulnerability and openness, provides the perfect setting for this kind of transparent heart-to-heart conversation with God. Saint Ignatius's own life story provides a compelling backdrop for understanding why his approach to prayer, especially at night, can be so transformative. Ignatius wasn't always a saint. As a young man, he was vain, ambitious, focused on worldly honor and romantic conquest. His conversion began during a period of forced convalescence after his leg was shattered by a cannonball in battle. Unable to pursue his usual activities, he found himself reading the only books available to him, the life of Christ and stories of the saints. During those long, painful nights, Ignatius began to notice something crucial about his interior life. When he daydreamed about returning to his former life of worldly ambition, he initially felt excited, but afterwards felt dry and discontented. But when he imagined following Christ like the saints he had been reading about, he not only felt inspired in the moment, but continued to feel peace and joy afterwards. This observation about the different quality of his interior movements became the foundation for his teaching on discernment of spirits, one of his most important contributions to spiritual wisdom. The night, with its enforced pause from activity, became for Ignatius a school of self-knowledge and divine encounter. His approach to prayer emerged not from abstract theology, but from his own lived experience of finding God in the darkness, both literal and metaphorical. This brings us to another key element of Ignatian spirituality that makes the Night Rosary so powerful: his emphasis on finding God in all things. For Ignatius, God isn't just found in explicitly religious activities, but in every dimension of human experience, including our emotions, desires, memories, and even our struggles. When we approach the Rosary with this Ignatian awareness, we bring our whole lives into the prayer, not just our religious selves. The young professional struggling with work stress, the parent worried about a child, the student facing crucial decisions. All of these real-life situations become material for prayer, not distractions from it. The mysteries of the Rosary then become lenses through which we view our own lives, discovering God's presence and action in unexpected places. This integration of faith and daily life is particularly important for young adults, who often feel a disconnect between their spiritual beliefs and the complex realities they face. The Night Rosary prayed in an Ignatian way becomes a powerful tool for bridging that gap, helping us discover the sacred dimension of our ordinary experiences. Let me share another pivotal moment from my own journey with the Night Rosary and Ignatian prayer. There was a period in my late 20s when I was facing a major life decision about my career path. I had two options before me, both seemingly good but pointing in different directions. I had prayed about it, asked for advice, sought signs, but still felt confused. One night, unable to sleep, I decided to pray the luminous mysteries of the Rosary using Ignatian contemplation. As I meditated on the baptism of Jesus, I found myself imagining the scene in vivid detail. I could hear the water of the Jordan flowing, see the surprised faces of onlookers, feel the heat of the sun. But what struck me most powerfully was imagining the voice of the Father saying, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." As I sat with this scene, continuing to pray the Rosary, a realization gradually dawned on me. My anxiety about making the perfect career choice was rooted in a deeper fear that I needed to prove my worth to God and others. The words of the Father to Jesus spoke directly to my heart, reminding me that my primary identity wasn't in what I did, but in who I was, a beloved child of God. This realization didn't magically tell me which job to take, but it transformed the way I approached the decision, releasing me from the pressure of self-validation and allowing me to choose from a place of freedom rather than fear. This is the power of Ignatian prayer. It often answers a deeper question than the one we thought we were asking. The Night Rosary, combined with Ignatian contemplation, offers something particularly valuable in our hyper-connected, distracted world: time for genuine interiority. Many of us live in a state of continuous partial attention, constantly responding to notifications, checking social media, absorbing headlines. We've lost the art of being fully present to any single reality, including our own interior lives. The night hours, when the world's demands typically diminish, provide a natural opportunity to reclaim this lost capacity for presence. The structure of the Rosary, with its rhythmic repetition of prayers, creates a container that helps settle our scattered attention. The Ignatian emphasis on sensory imagination engages parts of our brain different from those we use in our predominantly verbal and analytical daily tasks. Together, they create the conditions for a kind of deep attention that has become increasingly rare, yet remains essential for spiritual growth. This quality of attention isn't just a psychological skill, it's a form of reverence and acknowledgement that God is worth our full presence. And paradoxically, it's often in this place of complete attention that we experience the peace that has eluded us despite all our frantic activity. One aspect of Ignatian spirituality that particularly enriches the Night Rosary is his teaching on repetition. Unlike some spiritual approaches that constantly seek novelty or progress, Ignatius understood the value of returning repeatedly to the same gospel scenes, allowing them to reveal new depths over time. He explicitly builds repetition into the spiritual exercises, recommending that exercitants return to meditations that were particularly fruitful or challenging. This insight applies beautifully to the Rosary, which by its nature involves repetition. Rather than seeing the repeated prayers of the Rosary as monotonous, or the familiar mysteries as overly familiar, Ignatius would invite us to discover the unique grace available in each encounter with these realities. Just as returning to a beloved landscape at different times of day and in different seasons reveals new aspects of its beauty, so too returning to the mysteries of Christ's life again and again, especially during the night hours, allows them to speak to us in ever new ways. This Ignatian approach transforms repetition from potential tedium into a spiral of deepening intimacy with God. Ignatius also offers valuable guidance for dealing with the common challenges of night prayer, especially distraction, sleepiness, and spiritual dryness. Unlike some spiritual writers who treat such difficulties as obstacles to be overcome, Ignatius incorporates them into the spiritual journey itself. If you find yourself distracted during the night rosary, Ignatius would invite you to notice the distraction without judgment and gently return to your prayer. If you're struggling with sleepiness, he might suggest adjusting your posture, incorporating small movements, or shortening your prayer time while maintaining quality of attention. If you experience spiritual dryness, feeling nothing as you pray, he would encourage you to persevere, reminding you that such periods often precede significant spiritual growth. Above all, Ignatius emphasizes flexibility and adaptability in prayer, always seeking the approach that best facilitates your personal connection with God. This practical wisdom makes the Ignatian approach to the night rosary sustainable as a long-term practice, not just an occasional spiritual exercise. Let's now consider how this approach to night prayer can be integrated into the rhythm of daily life, especially for those of us with busy schedules and multiple responsibilities. Ignatius was remarkably practical in his spirituality, always seeking ways to help people find God within the concrete circumstances of their lives, not apart from them. He would likely offer several suggestions for incorporating the night rosary into contemporary life. First, he might suggest using periods of natural wakefulness, such as when you first go to bed before falling asleep, or if you wake during the night, rather than setting an alarm to interrupt deep sleep. Second, he would emphasize quality over quantity, perhaps suggesting just 1 decade of the rosary prayed with full Ignatian engagement, rather than rushing through all 5 decades. Third, he would encourage consistency and commitment while maintaining flexibility, allowing the practice to evolve with your life circumstances. Perhaps most importantly, he would invite you to approach the night rosary, not as another obligation to fulfill, but as a gift and opportunity for intimacy with God that refreshes rather than depletes your spirit. This balanced approach acknowledges the realities of contemporary life while still creating space for deep spiritual engagement. The integration of Ignatian contemplation with the night rosary also offers a powerful way to address one of the most common spiritual challenges of our time: fragmentation. Many of us feel pulled in multiple directions by competing demands, values, and identities. We compartmentalize our lives, separating our spiritual selves from our professional, personal, and social selves. This fragmentation leads to a sense of disconnection and often spiritual shallowness, as our faith remains isolated from large portions of our lived experience. The Ignatian Night Rosary directly counters this tendency by creating a contemplative space where all dimensions of our lives can be brought into relationship with the mysteries of Christ. As you pray the joyful mystery of the Visitation, for instance, you might bring to mind your own relationships, considering how you bring Christ to others or fail to do so. The sorrowful mystery of the carrying of the cross might become an opportunity to reflect on your own sufferings and how they relate to Christ's redemptive work. This integration of daily life and spiritual contemplation gradually heals the fragmentation we experience, creating a more unified sense of self, centered in God's love. The night hours, with their natural quality of synthesis and integration, provide an ideal setting for this healing work. One of the most beautiful aspects of Ignatian spirituality is its profound trust in the unique relationship between each individual and God. Unlike more prescriptive approaches that offer one-size-fits-all spirituality, Ignatius provides methods and principles while honoring the diversity of ways God works in different souls. This personalization is particularly evident in his guidance for directors of the spiritual exercises, who are instructed not to interfere too much, but to allow the Creator to deal directly with the creature, and the creature with the Creator. This respect for the uniqueness of each person's spiritual journey makes the Ignatian approach to the night rosary both flexible and profound. Two people might pray the same mystery using the same method, yet have completely different experiences, both equally valid and fruitful. This openness to personal experience within the framework of tradition makes Ignatian prayer especially valuable in our contemporary context, where many people are seeking authentic spirituality, but are wary of rigid or authoritarian approaches to faith. The night rosary becomes not a standardized practice, but a personal pilgrimage guided by tradition, yet uniquely your own. As we begin to draw this reflection to a close, I want to address some common questions and potential obstacles you might encounter in adopting this practice of the night rosary informed by Ignatian spirituality. You might wonder, is this really prayer, or just my imagination? Ignatius would respond that sanctified imagination is a powerful vehicle for genuine prayer, not a distraction from it. The imagination, when offered to God, becomes a meeting place between divine and human. You might worry I fall asleep during prayer, is this disrespectful? Remember that sleep itself can be a surrender to God, a recognition of our limitations and need for rest. Saint Ignatius of Loyola once remarked that she pleased God as much when she slept as when she prayed. You might question, but what if I don't feel anything significant happening in my prayer? Ignatius would gently remind you that the value of prayer isn't measured by emotional intensity, but by its fruits in your life over time. Do you grow in love, patience, kindness? These are the true measures of fruitful prayer. You might ask, what if I can't visualize well? Not everyone has a vivid visual imagination, and Ignatius knew this. You might connect more through imagined sounds, conversations, or the emotional atmosphere of a scene. All these approaches are equally valid paths to contemplative engagement. If these reflections on Saint Ignatius's teachings and the practice of the night rosary have touched something in your heart, I invite you to subscribe to this channel, where we explore together the path toward a deeper and more authentic faith. Each week we share teachings inspired by the lives of the saints to transform our spiritual life and draw closer to God. You are not alone in this search. Many of us are trying to live our faith with greater fidelity in today's world, especially through the richness of our Catholic tradition. Thank you for sharing this moment of reflection. Your presence here is already a sign of grace at work in your life. As we conclude, I want to leave you with a vision of possibility. Imagine your spiritual life not as a separate compartment of your existence, but as the animating center that brings integration and meaning to everything else. Imagine prayer not as an obligation to fulfill, but as a love affair with God that grows in intimacy and depth over time. Imagine the mysteries of Christ's life not as distant historical events, but as living realities that continue to unfold within your own story, revealing their meaning in ever new ways. This is the invitation of Ignatian spirituality, especially as applied to practices like the night rosary. It offers not just techniques or methods, but a comprehensive vision of life lived in conscious relationship with God. In those night hours, when you find yourself awake, perhaps restless or troubled, remember that you're not alone. You stand in a long tradition of night watchers, from the psalmist who wrote, "I rise before dawn and cry for help," to Ignatius, composing his spiritual exercises in the quiet of night, to countless ordinary believers who have turned to prayer in the darkness. The beads of the rosary become, in a sense, a lifeline connecting you to this communion of saints, even as they guide you deeper into your personal relationship with Christ. Whether you're a lifelong practitioner of the rosary or someone newly exploring this devotion, the night hours combined with Ignatian contemplation offer a uniquely powerful opportunity to experience God's presence. Remember the words of the Song of Songs. By night on my bed I sought him whom my soul loves. May you too find the beloved in those sacred hours when the world grows quiet and the deeper realities have space to speak. In the silence of the night, with rosary in hand, you join not only Ignatius, but Mary herself, who surely spent many night hours in prayer and contemplation, pondering all these things in her heart, as Scripture tells us. Through the rosary, you enter into Mary's contemplative gaze, allowing her to guide you into ever deeper communion with her Son. This is the ultimate gift of the night rosary. It brings together devotion to Mary, the contemplative wisdom of Ignatius, and your own unique journey toward God, creating a powerful synergy that can transform not just your prayer life, but your entire being. As the beads pass through your fingers in the darkness, they become touchstones of a reality that transcends time and space, drawing you into the eternal now, where God's love is always present, always active, always new. If you take away nothing else from our time together, remember this: the darkness of night need not be a time of absence or emptiness, but can become, through prayer, contemplation, and openness to grace, one of the most privileged spaces of divine encounter in your life. The same God who spoke to Samuel in the night watches, who sent angels to shepherds keeping watch by night, who raised Jesus before dawn on Easter morning, waits to meet you in those quiet hours. The Rosary and the wisdom of Saint Ignatius offer you a pathway into that meeting. The rest unfolds in the sacred privacy between you and God, where the deepest transformations always take place. If this message spoke to your heart, if you found yourself nodding along or recognizing your own experience in what I've shared today, I would be so grateful if you'd give this video a like and consider sharing it with someone who might also find this perspective on night prayer and Ignatian spirituality helpful. Your simple action could help someone else discover the transformative power of bringing these ancient spiritual practices into contemporary life. Until next time, may God bless you, and may Mary hold you close, especially in those night hours when you seek the face of her Son. Remember, you're not alone on this journey. We walk together as pilgrims through the darkness and into the light.